guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Center for Middle Eastern Strategic Studies, ORSAM, and TEPAV. Today, we are gathered here on the occasion of a remarkable event that brings together many distinguished guests from diplomatic missions in Ankara, practitioners, scholars, and students. Dear guests, today we have two esteemed speakers who will present their views on the new regional environment from Turkish and Palestinian perspectives, Ms. Amal Jadou and Ambassador Ahmet Yıldız. First, let me invite Ms. Amal Jadou, Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State of Palestine, to deliver her speech. Ms. Jadou, please, you have it.
Good morning. Such a lovely crowd, and it is an honor for me to be in Turkey today and to be surrounded by so many friendly faces and to be surrounded by the warmth of the Turkish people. It is always a pleasure for me to be in this country and to be surrounded by the love and the compassion that the Turkish people have for Palestine and for the Palestinian people. So I'm honored to be with you today. What I'm going to do today is basically not give a speech, but actually share with you some ideas about the current situation in Palestine and the Palestinian perspective on the regional developments and how that impacts the, finding a solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And I'm always a believer in more interactive sessions rather than lecturing, because I come from the academia too, and I was a student for a long period of my life, and I always preferred interactive sessions to lectures. So I'm going to share these ideas with you, and I look forward to a lively discussion after His Excellency's speech. Let me start out by saying that for Palestinians, everything starts and ends in Jerusalem, Al-Quds. Everything starts and ends in Jerusalem because Jerusalem is the crux of the conflict between Palestine and Israel. And for us, what is happening today in Jerusalem is really alarming. The Israeli policies in and around Jerusalem and in and around the Holy Mosque in Masjid al-Aqsa are extremely worrying. For the past 2 years, the Israeli policies of Judaizing the East Jerusalem have been going since the Israeli occupation of the city in 1967. However, for the past years, these policies have been increasing to an alarming level. What has been going is that, for a continuous period of time, the Israeli soldiers and police have been actually preventing Palestinian worshippers from entering the city, the holy city, between 7:30 and 11:30 every morning. And new policies have been basically adopted. There are cases when Israeli soldiers have entered the mosque itself. And that's really very, very dangerous. The problem with that, people ask me in Europe, why should that be a problem for these, worshippers, Jewish worshippers, from entering the mosque? I mean, if we didn't have a conflict, this should not be an issue. If we did not have a status quo that was established under the Ottoman Empire, that, it should not have been a problem. However, these people come for a reason because they are trying to break the status quo that existed, trying to create new rights for these, for the Jewish community in the mosque itself. And there is no secret in saying that there are forces in Israel, including parliamentarians in the Knesset, who basically are calling for demolishing the mosque and building a synagogue in its place. In fact, in the discussions of Camp David that happened in 2000, the issue was brought about in the discussions there to build a synagogue in the area of the vicinity of the Holy Mosque. And in fact, there was an interactive app at one point at the website of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs where people could see, the Holy Mosque and Masjid al-Aqsa falls apart and its place a new synagogue is being established. So our fears are justified, especially if we look at the situation in Hebron and the Ibrahimi Mosque and what happened there. The division, the time-wise division and the spatial division of the mosque is really alarming for Palestinians, that what happened in Al-Ibrahimi Mosque will be repeated in Al-Aqsa Mosque. And as I said, Jerusalem is, it's the spiritual capital, it's the cultural capital, it's the social capital, and so it really represents everything for Palestinians. And, a solution without Jerusalem will not basically be satisfactory to Palestinian people. The Palestinian position on Jerusalem is very clear. We say that we want a capital. East Jerusalem is the capital of State of Palestine, and West Jerusalem is the capital of the State of Israel, based on the two-state solution, and based on the solution on the 1967 borders to be the dividing line between the two states. We adopt that as a Palestinian leadership. To be honest with you, we don't know if the current Israeli leadership is really adopting that, because we did recognize State of Palestine, or Palestine recognized the State of Israel in 1993 in an exchange of letters that were exchanged between President Arafat at the time and Prime Minister Rabin. 1993. However, Israel never recognized the right of Palestinians to self-determination or to a state. So I start with Jerusalem. Israelis continue with their alarming policy of settlements, which really undermines the two-state solution, because it breaks the contiguity of the territory of 1967 borders, and leaves the Palestinian living in small Pantustans, divided and not continued, and they're divided actually by Israeli settlements and by vast roads that are dug for the settlers. Currently, there are more than 650,000 Israeli settlers in the occupied territories. Many of them are there for economic incentives. Because the State of Israel provides economic incentives for Israelis to move to the settlements. Some of them are basically there for ideological reasons, because they think that this is the territory of Judea and Samaria, and they have the right to be there for religious reasons. Now, this is the current situation: daily incursions into the Palestinian territories, arrests of young Palestinians. In fact, yesterday, they arrested 11 people who are the guards of the Masjid al-Aqsa. And, and young children are being imprisoned. There are more than 300 children in Israeli jails, and there are more than 5,000 Palestinian political prisoners in Israeli jails currently. So, in a region that is full of conflict right now, we have the conflict in Syria, we have the conflict in Iraq, we have the conflict in Libya, you have all sorts of conflicts in the region. The attention basically, is directed from the Palestinian issue to all of these conflicts. And our hearts go to the people of Syria and the suffering that they have been going through, and to the people in Iraq, and to the people in Libya, and to all the people who are suffering in Yemen, all the people who are suffering in our region. However, we believe that the Palestinian-Israeli conflict stays at the heart of all conflicts in the region. We don't fool ourselves, if we think that basically resolving the Palestinian-Israeli conflict will resolve all conflicts. However, we strongly believe that resolving the Palestinian-Israeli conflict can contribute tremendously to the stability in the region. Because we do believe in the Arab Peace Initiative. Tomorrow we'll have the Arab Summit that will be held in the Dead Sea area in Jordan. And basically one main emphasis will be emphasizing the Arab Peace Initiative, which was also adopted in the OIC and adopted by all Muslim countries, which basically calls for Israel to end its occupation of Arab territory in return for peace with the Arab world. So ending the Israeli occupation of Arab territories will be met by recognition and normalized relation with the Arab world and the Muslim world. Recently there were many attempts to negotiations. I mean, that Secretary Kerry ended his mission in in 2014 because he failed, and he basically attributed his failure to the intransigence of the Israeli government and its failure to respond to the requirements of the deals that were basically reached on the prisoners, releasing prisoners who were imprisoned before 1993, the signing of Oslo. There was also a call by the French in the latest French initiative, who basically wanted to have a multilateral approach to resolving the conflict. I'm a strong believer in multilateral approach to resolving the conflict, only because, first of all, we've been negotiating with Israel for 24 years, or even more, from 1991 with the Madrid conference up until, lately, where we had negotiations with Secretary Kerry, bilaterally. They put the two parties together, lock them in a room, have the Americans at the door, and expect the two parties to come with a solution. This has failed. For 24 years, this has failed. So why should we expect that it's gonna, succeed now? So it's important to change the approach. And the French understood that. In fact, previous Foreign Minister of France, Mr. Fabius, understood that very clearly. And he said, don't get me wrong, I'm not doing this for Palestine only. I'm doing this, I'm having this initiative also for Israel, because Israel's continuity, existence, and peace in the region, security, will only depend on creating a Palestinian state. And therefore he had his initiative, and then it was basically adopted by the current Foreign Minister of France, which basically was refused and had an antagonism from the State of Israel, who refused to participate whatsoever in the Paris conference, and in the Paris meeting and Paris conference. The last one was held on the 15th of January. We very much supported the initiative. We really wanted to have that multilateral approach because we saw the multilateral approach also succeed when it came to Iran, and finding a solution to the nuclear issue there with having a 5+1 formula. We said we're ready to have 20+2 formula or 6+2 formula or whatever formula that the Israelis can agree, as long as it's a multilateral approach and that the solution is rooted in international law and basically in the international consensus on creating a two-state solution. That was an attempt that was basically failed. We appreciated the fact that your foreign minister participated, had very strong words, and very sincere dedication and commitment to the solution. Then, we have the Arab Peace Initiative that will be re-emphasized and reiterated today or tomorrow in the Arab conference, in the Arab Summit conference. And now with the election of President Trump, the president, after basically having many actually statements that were against Palestinians during the campaign, including moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which is an extremely dangerous thing to do. And I urge my counterparts in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in the Turkish government, but also the Turkish people in general, that we need not to allow for this step to happen. Because if it happens, then basically that's moving the U.S. from the mediator into siding with one party, and so they really cannot contribute to any kind of mediating role afterwards. And also it will create problems, and it will be exploited by radical and extremist groups who are very alive in our region, as you all know. So it's going to be extremely dangerous, and it's going to have real repercussions on the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and on the situation on the ground. I do not think that the Palestinian people or the Arab and Muslim world will allow for that to happen. So it's important that this message is heard loud and clear. The other issue is that now the current President Trump sent an envoy, Mr. Jason Greenblatt, who's going to also be participating in the Arab Summit as an observer to see, what the Arab leaders will, how they're going to deal with the Palestinian issue. And the President Abbas is invited to Washington for meetings, and we hope, President Trump spoke about a deal to find a solution, but at the same time, in his meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu, he spoke about one state, two states. So, he really basically did not, adopt completely what the international community at large adopted, and that is a support, unwavering support to the two-state solution, and the solution manifested in the two-state solution, State of Palestine side by side with the State of Israel based on the 1967 borders. We really hope that this position will develop, will evolve. I like to use the word evolve because I've seen an evolvement in the US role on this issue, and I really hope that they can contribute. Now, Turkey is a main player in our region. It's a regional player, it's a big brother, and we definitely count on Turkey's support for Palestine and for finding a peaceful solution in our area. I'll stop here, and I look forward to the discussion with you. Thank you very much.
Ambassador Jadou, thank you for your speech. And now I'd like to invite Ambassador Ahmet, Yıldız, Deputy Foreign Minister of the Republic of Turkey, to deliver the speech.
Prime Minister, welcome to Turkey. Dear guests, I think you agree with me how difficult it is to speak on Palestine after a dedicated Palestinian Deputy Minister. But I should summarize Turkish position, and I look forward also to the discussion with you on this issue. Ladies and gentlemen, last 2 weeks ago, we made an interview with candidates for new political officers, for new diplomats in Turkish Foreign Ministry. They are, most of them are newly graduated from universities. One of the questions we asked them was always, was the issue of Palestine. Within these political questions. I remember very well our professors in university in mid-80s, they lectured us about Palestine, about the Middle East peace process, and they asked the same questions on us when we had the exams for the ministry on 89. Still we continue to ask the same questions. Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, dear students, the Palestinian issue, in my mind, represents two things. One is a very major international injustice by the international community against the people of Palestine. And secondly, it represents also a heroic resistance, resilience by the Palestinian people. Unfortunately, after the demolition, partition of the Ottoman Empire, our region had to face such similar issues. Also this year we remember, not commemorate of course, it is the centennial anniversary of the Balfour Declaration. So what we face today are the repercussions of the same policies represented by this declaration. In my diplomatic life, short one of course, compared to some veteran diplomats, some veteran politicians, what I imagine the Palestinian issue with this process like this. There is a just cause in Palestine, in spite of the injustice served unfortunately by the international community. But the parameters of the solution are well established and clear, and declared several times by the United Nations, by the countries, by the superpowers. And one conference after another, one round of negotiations after another, but always at the end it failed. I remember very well, I was, as a young diplomat, I was very optimistic from the Madrid conference. I remember very well this meeting on the desert, inauguration of this meeting by President Bush, Kim Hussein. Later Oslo, Camp David, Barak Arafat tours, unfortunately, all failed, and it is clear that the real impediment is the intransigence of Israeli politicians and their perception that Israeli interests are above everything else, everybody else in the region. So this is a very long approach. Fortunately, in recent years, international community, especially the United States, came to a conclusion that the real remedy is the two-state solution. Hopefully, international community will not retreat from this position. Really, it is indeed from the beginning, it is the essence of issue in the UN resolutions, and it is the position of Turkey. Madam Minister, ladies and gentlemen, of course, we share all the priorities you mentioned on recognition of the equal, sovereign state of Palestine, respect and preservation of the sanctity and statute and nature of the Haram al-Sharif, which is the holy site for all Muslims, and of course, empowerment of Palestine and our Palestinian brothers on every level to establish a state. Now, of course, it began with humanitarian assistance, technical assistance, but capacity building is the most important one for preparing the ground of sovereign Palestinian state. I am proud that Turkish institutions like TEPAV and others, all ministers, all civil society, are doing their best to this end. Of course, whatever we have been doing for Palestine is deserved, and we should do more according to our capabilities. These donor conferences, pledges, UNRWA, of course we will be chairing UNRWA, we are chairing now the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and also our relations with Israel. All these will be exploited to further the Palestinian cause, to help our Palestinian brothers. I am also ready to discuss with you on these issues. I will not prolong my speech. As I said, I was so happy that new graduate, undergraduate, graduate Turkish students were well aware of Palestinian issue and the Turkish positions. I was so happy after these interviews for the future. Thank you very much.
Mr. Minister, thank you for your speech. And now we move to question and answer session. I'd like to invite both speakers to and moderator Nilgün Arısan Eralp to the table.
I would like to welcome you once more on behalf of TEPAV and ORSAM, and I would like to express how honored and privileged we feel to host Her Excellencies Amal A and His Excellencies Ahmet Yıldız with us to discuss a crucial and long-lasting problem in the Middle East. Ms. Jadou, very in an excellent way, she put the unfair and unjust state of affairs in Palestine-Israeli conflict, and she also referred to the multilateral and international initiatives to solve this problem, which unfortunately failed until now. Also, she touched upon the Arab Peace Initiative. I think tomorrow you'll have a meeting. And also, naturally, she pointed the Trump factor, the Trump administration factor that doesn't seem to be promising nowadays, but you hope that it would evolve. It will evolve, inshallah. So thanks for all these clarifications, all these wonderful explanations you touched upon. And also, His Excellency Ahmet Yıldız touched upon the Turkish perspective on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And rightly, although the unilaterally, especially at the UN, two-state solution was declared as the ultimate the irrefutable solution, he touched upon the main blockage on the solution as the intransigence of Israel. Now I open the floor for your questions, comments to both speakers, but I would request from you to tell us who you are, which institution you represent, please. So the floor is open.
Ambassador Hüseyin Ahmet Bıçaklı, I'm one of the former consuls generals in Jerusalem, Kutsal Şerif of Turkey, Republic of Turkey. I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to both speakers for their information and opinions. They shared us their valuable opinions. My question will be to Her Excellency, Mr. Minister. You know, in 1993, Declaration of Principles, both parties have declared that there are 5 or 6 permanent status subjects, issues. You can summarize that land borders, Jerusalem, holy places, refugees, Jewish settlements, and natural resources like water and natural gas as well. Do you intend to add those 5 or 6 extra subjects as Palestinian side? Would you like to add in other issue such as security or nationality, double nationalities of 2 states, and some other issues, if you have. And second question, you mentioned about the Arab peace initiatives. It is important as well. Do you expect some other initiatives from other institutions like Islamic Cooperation Organization? You know, in history there were some concrete initiatives, but as an Islamic international organization, OIC has never put a proposal on this historical issue to solve the problem. So do you expect concrete initiatives from OIC? Thank you very much.
Your Excellency,
thank you for your comments and questions, and definitely, you know, you're one of the consul generals who are fondly remembered by my leadership. So, you know, we appreciate a lot your work in Jerusalem and all of your, all of the consul generals and ambassadors. I wanted also to say that, you know, the Declaration of Principles of 1993 basically envisaged a transitional period of negotiations, and that, you know, in May 1999 we will have a state of Palestine. And now we're in 2017, and that is not the reality for Israel. It is a reality for many countries in the world, 138 countries who recognize the state of Palestine. But unfortunately, our immediate neighbor fails to recognize the state of Palestine and the right of Palestinians to their right of self-determination. So the final status issues that were supposed to be discussed in those those years from 1993 up until 1999 were the issues that you mentioned. They're called the final status issues, and they included the issues that you referred to. And we basically, you know, have been in discussions and in the discussions to try and find a solution for those final status issues. Obviously, the issue of prisoners was added to those issues, so that they ended up being 6 issues. And there were certain agreements, and especially in the negotiations that were conducted between President Abbas and Prime Minister Olmert in 2007. Basically, the two parties came very close to finding a solution in all of these issues. They had 6 months consecutive months and intense negotiations in those months, and the two parties came very close to finding a solution. Unfortunately, Prime Minister Olmert became involved in a case of corruption, and he's imprisoned and he's still in jail. So basically, that did not. It's a tragedy all the time with the negotiations between the Palestinians and the Israelis. There's always a tragedy that they have not concluded. And so it was unfortunate. So in my opinion, these remain the main issues. We're talking about borders, we're talking about security, we're talking about settlements, Israeli settlements of the occupied territories, colonization policy, and we're talking about Jerusalem as the main issue. So these remain and refugees, Palestinian refugees of 1948, that remain the main issues to be discussed. On adding double nationality, something like that, I don't think that this is an issue to be discussed now. What we're calling for, what the international community at large adopts as the solution forward, is two states. Two states living side by side in peace and security, state of Israel recognized by the world, and state of Palestine that needs to be recognized by the countries that have not recognized yet. And so it's essential that this is the formula that we push for. I believe, strongly believe. I'm a refugee myself, and my home is in West Jerusalem, and it is in a very nice neighborhood in the German Quarter, in Malha, in West Jerusalem. I visited my home. I still feel attached to that home, but I have accepted the compromise solution of two states. And so, so this is what we need to materialize, because it is the win-win solution for the conflict. Obviously my rights needs to be recognized. And for me, my personal story is that the family who lived in my grandpa's house, the lady ended up being an Iraqi Jew, who basically told me and my dad when we visited in the year 2000 that she wished she would lose half of her kids and be able to go back to Iraq and for us to come back to our home. So in a way, she basically recognized that right, and she made it even more complicated, because it would have been much easier if she was mean, because then she would have been my enemy, but she wasn't. So it really shows you the complexity of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and how the human dimension is so important, and how the issue of dignity, that the Palestinian people are deprived of their dignity by Israeli policies that steal their land, that treat them like they're dehumanized at checkpoints, that imprisons them, that really deprives them of their basic rights. This is what is very at the crux of the matter in that conflict. So in order to find a real solution, we need to attend to the human dimension of this conflict. And unless we find a solution to all these issues, Your Excellency, that you mentioned, the peace will not be lasting. So in order to have a lasting peace and to have a win-win solution, we need to create on the ground a sovereign, contiguous, and independent Palestinian state. On the issue of the OIC, presenting a new initiative, I believe that we welcome the world to basically put forward initiatives that are rooted in international law in order to help the parties come to a solution. I said that I'm a strong believer in a multilateral approach to the negotiations because the bilateral approach has failed. And it's important that the world basically contributes. But I also remember, Your Excellency, that the OIC adopted the Arab Peace Initiative as a solution. So we're talking about 57 Islamic countries that are willing to have normalized relations and have the flag of Israel raised in their capitals if Israel decides to withdraw its occupying forces from the Arab occupied territories and allow for a Palestinian state to be established on the ground. So it's important that yes, we keep the belief in in finding a solution and to push forward for a lasting solution between the two parties.
you. And referring to the statement by His Excellency, the Minister, that despite the parameters for a just solution being known and well established, we haven't, you both sides and the international community, we haven't succeeded in achieving that. So what are the key lessons that you could learn from what happened in the past quarter of century, and what is the way forward in order to avoid those shortcomings?
Maybe first you go. Ladies first. Please.
I think you should answer this question, but let me add my suggestions. My diplomatic experience says that international community has lack of genuine, and there is no genuine approach by the real actors on this issue. First, Israel. I summarized what happens with Israel. Secondly, UN, of course, and other international organizations are intergovernmental ones. They are under the influence of the governments. But what I remember, especially the United States, as Madam Minister says, was moving the embassy, that sometimes, mostly, not sometimes, such issues, such vital international issues have become hostage to the selfish interests of some groups, some lobbies, or some politicians in the US. It is indeed well known on many issues also about Turkey, not just Palestine. I remember very well when the United States bring the sides together. It is a very noble approach. It's okay, bilateral, multilateral. But at the end, I remember very well what, for example, Secretary Baker, James Baker, told about when Israel stepped back or became so intransigent. The position is that you know our telephone number. If you want a solution, call us. No enforcement. Okay. Secondly, also regional actors in the region, neighboring countries and Arab countries, leaders in the region should have a genuine approach. Sometimes, unfortunately, these issues, such issues, are kind of used in the statements as a rhetoric, away from realistic approaches. Okay? The real lessons, I think, and Madam Minister can summarize more, of course, to stick to the well-established principles on this issue. And it's well known, land for peace, as in our initiative. Also, negotiators from both sides should keep this in mind always. And of course, the basic principle of international relations is equality. Interests and security of one side cannot be superior to the other. So this is the lesson I think Israel should do. Thank you.
It's so interesting, Your Excellency. I did my PhD on the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, and you know, the crux of it, it ended up being summarized as the gap in power and the inequality was really the main reason why all these rounds of negotiations from 74 up until like 2000 failed. It's basically that, you know, gap in power where one country is an occupying power and another nation is an occupied people. So, you know, you summarized it really well. But just to come to your question also, it's very important to say that the current situation is not helping the Palestinians at all, because the region is in shackles with all the conflicts. I mean, the conflict in Syria, the conflict in Yemen, the conflict in Libya, you know, the problem with Daesh and terrorism and all of these issues. So the Arabs, the immediate neighbors, are busy with their own internal conflicts, and that really detracts from the attention that is given to the Palestinian issue, despite the fact that the Arab street and the Arab people still consider the Palestinian issue as the main issue, and the injustice you know, that the Palestinians undergo is, you know, a huge grievance for all the Arab people. So this is very, very important. But, you know, in terms of politics, you know, countries are busy with, you know, with internal domestic issues and other issues. When it comes to Europe, you know, the situation in Europe is no better. I mean, you know, the issue of Brexit, the issue of immigration, the issue of terrorism, the issue with the standoff with Russia, Ukraine, all kinds of issues that, and the economic crisis and all of that. So Europe has been busy with that. You go to the US and you have currently a new administration with President Trump, who's basically been very, very supportive during his campaign of Israel. I mean, they opposed the UN Security Council resolution that was adopted on the 23rd of December on settlements. You know, they've announced their will to move the embassy, you know, their statements. I mean, since the inauguration of President Trump, in 2 weeks' time, after the inauguration in 2 weeks, or within 2 weeks, Israel announced more than 6,000 units to be built in Israeli settlements. That's a huge number. I mean, the world at large issued a statement condemning that, but the US did not. And in the past, during the previous administration, you know, there was always, you know, a statement coming from the State Department basically criticizing Israel for announcing more and more settlements. So in fact, Israel feels that basically it has the upper hand to create realities on the ground that will, you know, empower it and emphasize, you know, its control over the area. And in fact, you know, in the past, Prime Minister Netanyahu used to give lip service to the two-state solution. I mean, he announced his support for the two-state solution in the Bar Ilan speech. I don't know if he said it after that, you know, his support to two-state solution, but that was the famous speech because everybody was urging him to express his support for the two-state solution. However, now, and clearly, he feels that President Trump talks about one state or two states, whatever Israel likes. And then, at the same time, he speaks about autonomy plus or state minus. And he wants to have two conditions before any kinds of negotiations: recognizing Israel as a Jewish state and keeping control of the borders forever. So what kind of a state, the Palestinian state that we're talking about, like a Mickey Mouse state or a state without sovereignty, is not a state that the Palestinians have been fighting for all of their lives. I mean, we want to live like any other nation in our state, with basically our rights, and just to be, you know, normal people living in a dignified life and not to be controlled by another power. Now, Israeli security concerns, we are important because if we need to find a solution, we need also to attend to that. And that's why my president said, let's have a third-party forces. They may be NATO, they may be any kind of American, any kind of forces on the ground that will ensure the borders between the two parties. And to be honest with you, we're the weaker party. We're not a nuclear power. We don't have, aircraft. We don't have missiles. I mean, we have a police force, basically. And so, for us, our security is really important for us, and we need to be the party protected from a country that has been occupying us for the past 50 years. So, the parameters are known. It's the international will that is missing, that is the will that really needs to put pressure on a party that has been occupying another nation for 50 years. And, with that missing, I remember the only time Israel really stopped its settlement activities was under Bush Sr., when basically he stopped the loan guarantees support of $10 billion to Israel, and then Israel basically went to the Madrid conference. So there is leverage for countries, for the world to use with Israel, but Israel enjoys U.S. full diplomatic and financial support. I mean, the Obama administration, gave the largest package of, financial support to the state of Israel. So with the lack of any kind of pressure, with the realities that I explained before about the situation in the region, the situation in Europe, and the situation with the US, Israel feels that they can create the realities on the ground that they want, and then the world is not paying attention. And if they're paying attention, they're issuing statements of condemnation that Israel has learned to live with, that they basically rebuff and they don't care about. They can, continue their business unabated with all kinds of condemnation statements coming from all sorts of countries.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. Are there any other questions, comments? So the situation is crystal clear. Yeah. So I would like to conclude. If you would like to say some concluding remarks, make some concluding remarks, you would be pleased. Sure.
Thank you. Indeed, these days, before when we say Middle East issue, we always remember Palestine, Israel issue. Now we have other problems also in Iraq, Syria, and Libya, as Madam Minister said. But it will, in our mind, it will never shadow the Palestinian cause. It is well accepted by the international community, by Turkish people especially. And as Turkish people, we will follow the issue closely. And any initiative, any action that will erode the basic parameters of the solution, there are two-state solution with full sovereign Palestinian state, with Jadou, East Jerusalem as capital and sanctity of the Quds and Haram Sharif. So that any initiative to erode this is not welcome, will be unacceptable. It's not just for Turkey, for the majority of the international community, and also it is against the rules of the international relations. The basic is that whenever you invade the land of others, then you will face resistance. You should face sanctions. But on the other hand, of course, according to the UN resolutions and according to the Arab Peace Initiative also, Israel has the right to exist within the recognized borders. These are 967 borders. When negotiations come to this point, of course, Israel, as the Arab Peace Initiative said, will be recognized as an equal partner in the region and in the world. Let's hope we see this solution, conclusion in my diplomatic lifetime before retirement. Thank you.
Well, I would like to use this opportunity to express my gratitude and the gratitude of the Palestinian people to the people of Turkey for all the support, the people of Turkey and the government of Turkey and the leadership in Turkey for all their continued support to Palestine and to the people of Palestine. Political support, I will never forget when Palestine's status was upgraded in the United Nations with the foreign minister at the time, Minister Jadou being there and basically, giving a very strong speech in support of that upgrade. And, throughout all the decisions and all UN resolutions, Turkey's been there for Palestine. In addition to that, we receive a lot of support in terms of projects and support institutions and training our diplomats and training our civil servants and, support in the water sector, in the energy sector, rebuilding Gaza, all kinds of, support that we get from the Turkish government that we're highly appreciative of. The gratitude was shown by the Palestinian people who went to the streets immediately during the attempted coup d'etat in July here, people went out and they were, extremely against it, and they went out in support of the, leadership of Turkey here, and that is really an expression of gratitude that the Palestinians wanted to show to their brethren here in Turkey. I also wanted to say that, Al-Masjid al-Aqsa is waiting for your visit, and, it is not a Palestinian, it's not only for Palestinians, it's for Muslims all over the world. So we definitely would like to see, Turkish people visiting the mosque and coming there and, just being present, because it's essential that we emphasize its nature and, its importance to the Muslim people at large. Thank you very much.
Now it is included by Turkish tourism agencies in the UMRA program. Hopefully it will be a catalyst for more visits.
So I would like to conclude here by thanking to our very distinguished speakers and to you for attending to this very important conference. Thank you.